Film Show.
Cambridge Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Cambridge Film Show, and its mission, should our reviewers choose to accept it, is to complete a fortnightly dive into the latest releases that you can catch this weekend in cinema or on streaming. Half-term has reared its merciful head. The sun has ducked its, though, but the Cambridge Beer Festival is still in full swing under that giant tent, and we have yet another barrel full of films to get through today. I'm Lorcan O'Neill, along with my co-host today, Emma Marchant.
Hi there.
And our batch of expert reviewers, Vicky Ayre.
Hello.
Luke Irwin.
Hello.
And Matthew Taylor.
Hello.
Today we'll hear if Tom Cruise can pull off yet another series of intricate heists and epic action extravaganza, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Wes Anderson returns for another star-studded spectacle in the Phoenician scheme. Guy Ritchie remains ever unpredictable with his action fantasy Fountain of Youth. Will The Weeknd be blinded by his own lights in Hurry Up Tomorrow? Disney are hoping for a swift rebound after their last live-action remake, this time bringing us back to tropical shores and outer space adventure in Lilo and Stitch. Switching gears to Rosamund Pike and Matthew Rhys as they star in psychological thriller Hallow Road. Death returns after a 14-year hiatus with ever more creative kills in Final Destination Bloodlines, and we'll end on another off-season scare in the latest in Netflix's Fear Street series, Prom Queen. So, without further ado, is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's a 62-year-old adrenaline junkie with a mission to save cinema.
This can't all be true.
Every word.
CIA Black Vault break-in.
Am I reading this correctly? The Kremlin bombing?
In fairness, the bomb was actually meant to kill him.
He gassed a security briefing.
That was just 2 months ago.
This explains the handcuffs. It's still not clear why he's here.
Tom Cruise returns as super spy Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Originally subtitled Dead Reckoning Part 2, the film naturally picks up where the last one left off, with our band of espionage experts racing to the bottom of the ocean to lay claim to a rogue AI. Along for the ride are a slew of new and familiar faces with Ving Rhames, Hayley Atwell, Simon Pegg, Hannah Waddingham, Nick Offerman, and was that Severance's hunky floor manager, Tremel Tillman, I spied. Emma, Cruise is on the cusp of 63, starring in the 8th film of a 30-year-old franchise. Could this possibly deliver the goods?
Yes, it could, and it did. I know that Lorcan and I went to go and see this together, and I was expecting... I really liked Dead Reckoning Part 1. I'm still confused as to why this wasn't called Dead Reckoning Part 2. Is it because of...
The last one was financially unsuccessful.
Thank you very much, Lorcan. This is very true. He did not save cinema as much as he tried. Well, he did save cinema. I guess Tom Cruise did save cinema with Maverick, right? But
yes.
then did not necessarily save himself with Mission Impossible. And I was really disappointed with how badly Dead Reckoning Part 1 did, because I thought it was an excellent piece of filmmaking with cracking stunts. I think Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise together, because, you know, this is, make no mistake, this is their film and their film front and centre, had hit a really sweet spot with this. So I think I went into this one expecting something that would be that would just blow me away, and maybe it left me a little bit let down with that. I think it's similar to Dead Reckoning. You have sort of 3 really big set pieces, including, like you said, this massive underwater set piece, which I imagine Tom Cruise has trained for probably years, because I imagine, like Hermione Granger, he has a time turner, which can be the only explanation for how he can be this good and have this much energy and get this much done at almost 63. It has obviously the classic running scenes. It has some great supporting cast, but I just found... I think I expected to be more touched. I expected to feel more emotionally sort of wrung over maybe at the end of this 30-year-old franchise. I haven't gone back and watched the rest of them. I have watched them all as they've come out, but obviously it's been over a really long period of time. So the only one I rewatched was Dead Reckoning Part 1, because that I found quite relatively confusing. This was much less confusing, but alas, because the script was just chunks and chunks and chunks of exposition with what felt like never. Lorcan is shaking his head fiercely, so we can agree to disagree, but I just felt a lot, and it's very action films need a good baddie, and maybe in this case the Entity, you struggle a little bit. It's not giving anything away, obviously, that the Entity from Dead Reckoning is the baddie again, this sort of AI gone rogue who but is also the face of Gabriel, this baddie who came in after 7 films in the last one, who apparently broke Tom Cruise's heart by killing a woman that I frankly didn't even recognise from whatever film that was in. I don't know what.
Well, it's pre-Mission Impossible 1. It's the reason he got started.
But it's
with
shown
the
in
IMF.
Mission Impossible 1, is it? Or do you never see it in
No,
any of the
you
other
never see
films?
it. It's the mysterious reason why he was inducted into the IMF.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Now I know that. That is helpful for me. Maybe that would have changed my entire opinion. No, it is. Tom Cruise is a phenomenon. He is an absolute. We will not see his like again, if we've ever seen his like before. As they say, and again, the big set piece here, the biplane set piece at the end is. You're kind of waiting for a little bit like you were for the motorcycle jump in the last one, and it is incredible. It is like the railway in the last one. It harks back to silent films, to that incredible. He wants you to see every ounce of sweat and every ounce of work that goes onto that. On that, just like he says, just like Gene Kelly did with his dancing. That is Tom Cruise, and my goodness, you do see that, and you cannot help but root for someone who is that passionate and that earnest about filmmaking. In general. So
and yeah, I think harking to the old school spectacle, I think that is very much what Chris McQuarrie wants people to get out of this. Matt, it's just shy of 3 hours. I would say that's an epic runtime. It's not the only thing epic about the film, but do you think, how did you feel? Was it all too much?
I think it's too much. I mean, especially if you consider this as one 6-hour movie that's been chopped into 2 parts. I think that's just completely over the top, especially when it hasn't really got an emotional centre to it to really make you care about. There's sort of hints of a romance between Tom Cruise and Hayley Atwell, but it never really goes anywhere, and just made me think that I want to see Hayley Atwell do a Tomb Raider movie, because I think she'd be really good at it. Too many characters, not really any connection to them. Most of the plot advancing is done by characters standing in a circle, and each one just delivers the next bit of exposition. Except one of the characters is now doing it in French, and I think everyone understands her, but it's not really clear. I mean, we've got subtitles, so we're okay. But it just kind of speaks to the kind of interchangeability of all of the humans that are in this. The plane scene at the end was incredible as a spectacle, but it's not really in service of anything interesting plot-wise. And when that's been hyped up so much in the marketing, you're just like, okay, come on, when's the plane bit? Okay, here we go, they're on planes. Why are there 2 planes when the villain only needs one to get away? Doesn't matter, there's 2 planes.
I think there's another problem with that, isn't there? And it was the same with the motorbike thing. When they leave that stunt till the very end, there's no sense of peril at all, but there's no sense of peril because you're like, well, I know he's going to survive because he's got to do this massive plane stunt, and we haven't seen that yet, so that's going to have to come. So nothing terrible is going to happen until then. That was I think
that's fine to leave the tension to the very last action, because we know the main character is going to make it to the last action set piece, but will he survive that last action set piece? I suppose I would disagree with Matt. I think there's a sequence in a log cabin in the North Pole which I love. I think Chris McQuarrie, it really has an eye on character, because you've got Palm Clementoff, who's like this French assassin. You've got I can't remember his name, Shea Whigham's partner, Greg Tarzan Davis, playing this big guy, and he's very much a do-gooder. And so you got Palm Clementoff's character just wanting to murder everyone, his character being like, please don't. And you've got every character is doing something, and the stakes raise and raise and raise. Meanwhile, you've got Tom on this magical submarine of C-list celebrity seamen,
and he's having a fight as well for some reason.
I thought the tension built for 2 parallel scenes, and then the payoff I thought was just spectacular. And I think there's so much love for the franchise. Really surprising characters come back in really wholesome ways that make perfect sense. The release date of the original Mission Impossible plays an important part of the film, which you can rewatch and look more into. I think there's new characters. I think I love Hannah Waddington. I think she brings a lot. Holt McNally and Nick Offerman kind of standing off.
Tramel Tillman was a highlight, the least likely submarine captain ever. I found
but
him,
just so
perfect.
charming. Oh my god!
It's kind of an embarrassment of riches when you've got so many big names.
Agreed.
And not really enough for them to do.
I mean, 3 hours. I thought everyone had room to breathe. I agree. Hayley Atwell is fantastic. They do. It is weird to do a very small smidgen of romance there, but it's blinkingly
lightly hinted at.
She is a great action. She's a great action hero, though. Hayley Atwell. I was disappointed, though. I'm going to say by the lack of masks in this one. There weren't that many.
Yeah, there were no cool mask bits.
Yeah, which really at the end of a franchise. And I think the problem is as well, you're right, Lorcan, it does have these glorious Easter eggs back throughout the entire franchise. But this franchise is 30 years old, and it's not a franchise, say, like Bond. It's a franchise in between everything else that Tom Cruise does. And so you've got to have an enormous amount of love and knowledge of it to appreciate that. And I don't know if your standard summer movie-going attendee is going to necessarily go in with holding 30 years worth of Mission Impossible knowledge in their head.
Yeah, you get more if you do have that, or if you rewatch all the originals. But I don't know. I think there's enough here to keep people satisfied.
It is great. Don't get me wrong. I just was expecting it to be bombastic. I think I was expecting to feel like I did when I watched Top Gun Maverick, which just absolutely blew me. Because I am a huge Tom Cruise fan. Because like I say, how can you not be? He's just unlike. I don't even think he's human. He is unlike any creature on this earth.
We'll end on where do we think this stands in the legacy? Because this is the 8th film now. Whereabouts do we think this ranks?
Well, something that's really cool about the Mission Impossible franchise up until the recent 4 was that they all had a different director and a really kind of distinct identity. So I would sort of class this as being part of the 5th Mission Impossible, because those final 4, Mission Impossible 5 to 8, all feel very interchangeable. And for me, I'd say better than Ghost Protocol, but worse than Mission Impossible 1, 2 and 3.
Oh.
Don't come to me, because I did not rewatch them all before this, so I would not be able to tell you.
Matt, did you watch it in IMAX?
I did, see it in IMAX, yeah.
Did you, even with the IMAX, did you
it's impressive, but when there's no emotional centre to it, it will never really rises above, oh, that's pretty cool. But I didn't really care about it. I'd never watch this again, for example.
Oh, wow. So it looks like us in the studio seem to mirror perfectly the critical reception, where you've got 10 out of 10s and then just 3 or 4s out of 10s, and so somewhere in the middle, maybe.
I'd say 6 out of 10. I wasn't bored, but I just wouldn't want to sit through it again.
I'm giving it 7.5 to 8 out of 10.
Okay.
7.5 to 8. Do you like how edgy I am there? Ooh, it's the old Emma Marchant, my own personal scoring. Yeah,
There are 2 people in the studio who are holding out for the IMAX, so I hope they enjoy it, and I hope everyone enjoys it as much as I did, at least. But some mixed reviews from the studio. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is showing at all 4 Cambridge cinemas.
Okay, so moving on, I think we're going to get a little bit of the trailer for the Phoenician scheme.
At this moment, rescue workers are laboring to recover and identify the remains of Zsa Korda, international businessman, maverick in the fields of armaments and aviation, among the richest men in Europe. This was Korda's 6th recorded airplane crash. He is survived by 10 children, 9 boys, 1 nun, his daughter Liesel.
I've appointed you sole heir to my estate, which you may come into sooner rather than later.
Why? It's been 6 years since our last meeting.
I have my reasons.
Which are what?
My reasons? I'm not saying. I'm saying I'm not saying.
Since his debut with Bottle Rocket in 1993, Wes Anderson has spent the last 30 years crafting a cinematic universe which is now so instantly recognisable it has its own iPhone filter. With recurring actors, pastel palettes, meticulous set design and deadpan deliveries, his formula seems to work, although I do think that maybe of late he's being considered a little bit Marmite for cinema goers. His latest is a Phoenician scheme, which gives us Benicio del Toro, Zsa Korda, multimillionaire 1950s entrepreneur whose attempts to leave his fortune to his eldest daughter, novice nun Liesel, played by Mia Threppleton, daughter of Kate Winslet, lead into the scheme of the title and a huge plethora of stars which arrive for, frankly, reasons impossible to fathom. Vicky,
yes,
I thought that Wes Anderson jumped the shark for me probably around the French Dispatch, but you loved that.
I loved it. I thought it was full Wes. He really leaned into every one of his idiosyncrasies that he just needed to put on full display. It was really the pinnacle. I know Grand Budapest is seen as a perfect film, and I do honestly believe that, but French Dispatch was like, this is his personality going forward. He's fully lent into himself. He's found his groove, and this is what we're going to see from there on out.
Okay, so then we had Asteroid City, and now we have the Phoenician scheme. So how are you feeling that he is still leaning into himself and you are still loving it?
So with Asteroid City, I feel like I did not appreciate it. I just didn't get on board with it. I feel like the French Dispatch and all the films that have come before it, and as Wes has grown, and you can see within his filmography, you can definitely tell it's a Wes Anderson film, even if it's just small details. He's made sure to find those things that he's perfected, and he adds them into every single film so you recognise his work. Asteroid City had little to no heart for me, though. I felt like it really lent into it after the French Dispatch, but it just lost the emotional tie you have with the characters. It was too overchanging. It was switch changing between his animation side to his normal filming side, and you couldn't find the groove within that. But he really leans back into the best part of his filmmaking skill with the Phoenician scheme. The set is incredible. He has obviously a plateau of actors that is at his helm, and I feel like they really balance well off each other. I mean, maybe it's just my taste personally, but having Michael Cera and Richard Ayoade pop up as rugged men in scenes that I do not expect to see them in really sat very well with me, as well as just having Benicio del Toro come back from the French Dispatch. I think that was his first film as the artist, and it really shone a different side to his acting, which I can definitely tell was always there. He really suits the lead role in this, but I loved the kind of family ties. He definitely found a good rhythm between the actors, and you make sure to display that alongside obviously incredible framing, great characters and costumes and sets and everything that comes with a Wes Anderson production.
Lorcan, there are themes here obviously about corruption, about the idea of money, because this whole scheme seems to be involved. There's also this idea of slavery and corrupting sort of this unknown country of Phoenicia, which also seems to have natural resources which are there for the exploitation. But it's a very brisk running time, 100 minutes. Do you think it dips into any? Does it don't do more than scratch any of the surface of any themes? Or is it just Wes Anderson?
One of the best things about Wes Anderson is he's not agenda-driven or political at all. He uses these things as a backdrop for his characters, and that's it. I don't think he wants to say anything specific, or if he does, it's very momentary. I think it's very nice that I think the film's dedicated to his father-in-law, his wife's father, Fuad Mutifa, who's apparently this eccentric businessman, and Wes Anderson said he just had an image of Benicio del Toro in sunglasses, and he wanted him to be in a new film where he plays a tycoon, where he's in every shot of the film. I think in the end he doesn't end up being in every single shot, but he's in almost every shot. But I think a lot of people say it's very Wes Anderson, but I think the impressive thing about Wes Anderson is you can like a Fellini film, no matter, you can see a scene from any one of his films and know, okay, well, that's obviously Wes Anderson. But unlike Fellini, if you see a scene from one of his films, you could name which film it's from. Whereas I think, despite having a very signature look and aesthetic, his films all have a very specific tone. His characters range quite a bit. The delivery can be similar, and even though the characters are saying what's on their mind, it's all very subtextual at the same time, whereas everyone's saying what's on their mind, but at the same time they're thinking something else, or they've got another motive, or you're just curious as to why characters behave the way they do, and then you get hints as to why they do behave that way. So I disagree with Vicky. I think Asteroid City was really, really, really great. I think with Grand Budapest Hotel, which is almost perfect film, he got really introspective about the nature of storytelling, and so Grand Budapest Hotel was the first of the idea of stories within stories, and how narrators can affect the story that you're seeing, and that carries through French Dispatch, that carries through what was the Henry Sugar, which is also a story within a story. I think Asteroid City is what he was building up to. It's like how does a story within a story, when it's constantly changing depending on what the people behind the camera, behind the pen are changing things and moving things around, and how you can have an unsatisfactory project because you've got all these different narrative voices coming in. I thought it was really interesting. He's taken a step back from the the stories within the stories, just to tell a very familial, sweet film that touches on a lot of subjects, but I think it just builds up this nice atmosphere and vibe and mood, and I think it's a pretty breezy one of his films. But I think it's very, very good.
Breezy, I will agree with. I'm going to disagree with both of you. Like I say, for me, the French Dispatch, and I didn't like Asteroid City, and I really didn't like this. I really loved the opening credits of some of the most beautiful things I've seen on screen. They blew me away, and the closing 3 to 4 minutes, also just gorgeous. And like Vicky said, I was overjoyed to see Benicio del Toro front and centre. He's such a fine actor. He's made interesting choices which have kind of dropped him out of the public eye, if you like. He hasn't really made huge films since his kind of breakthrough in Traffic, but he is so good and so watchable and so likeable. but I just felt the story in this case just was so. I know that is Wes Anderson's style, to give us over convoluted, unrealistic situations, but it lost it for me. I will ask though, either of you, what do we think? I mean, Mia Threppleton is obviously a Nepo baby of the highest order, I guess. I was quite struck by how much she sounds like her mother.
She was wonderful.
But I was going to say, but I do think from this, I think she's had incredible, I think people might not like Wes Anderson, but she has had, in general, incredible reviews, because she does have this wonderful face for this Wes Anderson.
I don't know what it is, but she looks identical to Imogen Poots, and the whole time I really did have to, who also has an incredible, very symmetrical face that is designed for the camera. So every time I was like, oh, who is this person? And I had to Google it again. But this is her breakout, and I think she did a stunning job of it. I think I laughed the most at her quips, especially with being a nun. And then I don't want to spoil anything, but how that entails. And there's a very, very, very fun line where you were always just a rich girl. That was delivered by a person that I did not expect it to come from. I think her story. She never annoyed me. I know in the trailer I was like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to get on with this character. She's going to be the antagonist that is never on board with the plan. I actually enjoyed her calmness throughout everything, and it was played off really, really well. And I think although it is a breezy film, is what we've said, Wes Anderson never plays the game of the audience is stupid, in that he doesn't have to over-explain anything. You definitely catch on quick, and I think that's how these characters come and shine. Even small moments, Bryan Cranston and Tom Hanks, their little scenes together is very much that was the first part of the Phoenician scheme explained, and what are they trying to entail, and just from a few quick flashcards, I'm like, okay, I know what's going on now. I know what the plan is, and I now get the plot of the film.
And just to end, because it's called the Phoenician scheme, and there's a lot of Egyptian aesthetic things. So you've got Mia Threppleton, who's a nun, but she's made up completely like this Egyptian goddess, and you've got all these vases, and everything just looks so like Egyptian linen.
You have a phenomenal fight scene at the end, actually, with Benedict Cumberbatch and Benicio del Toro, which was well worth it. Okay, that was the Phoenician scheme. It is a very Wes Anderson type of Certificate 15. It's showing at the Picture House, The Light, and The Everyman. You know what to expect. Go and see it.
Well, from a filmmaker that you always know what to expect from, to one who always surprises, here's the trailer for Guy Ritchie's new fantasy film.
There's a power beyond any of our comprehension. One story. 5 continents. Dozens of cultures over thousands of years.
And which genius will explain to me why I'm here?
Keep the cat in the bag until I release it. Yeah? Great.
We're looking for the Fountain of Youth.
Oh, please, no.
What did I just say about the cat in the bag?
National treasures John Krasinski and Natalie Portman are Indiana Jonesing for some eternal life as co-leads in Fountain of Youth, an adventure film where estranged siblings must follow historical clues in the pursuit of the mythical water. Vicky, as a fan of the Indiana Jones and Librarian franchises, I believe, how does this rank?
I was just about to introduce myself and loving this exact subgenre. That is men that know a lot about archaeology going into the wild, which is why I had such a good time with this, I guess. Absolutely, I love the Librarian films. I love National Treasure, Indiana Jones. That's absolutely my vibe. And I didn't know anything about this film until I got a text in the chat, and it was literally, oh, so this is just National Treasure, yes? And I was like, okay, I'm on board straight away. And I had a really fun time with this. I think John Krasinski, apart from when he did the horror film that I've now completely
Quiet Place?
Quiet Place. I haven't really ever seen him as a lead man. Maybe it's just my watching habits. However, I did really enjoy him in this. I thought he doesn't exactly have the charisma of Brendan Fraser or Nicolas Cage, but I think he still has the action body, and he's leaning into it very well. This could be, going forward, if it is Apple TV, they may go forward with this. I think this is a good stereotype for him. Natalie Portman, however, I think was I didn't expect to see her, and I didn't expect her to be this bland as a side character. She maybe pulled down the film for me, but what did pull me up was Isa Gonzalez. She is a firecracker, I think, in almost everything she does, and she really brought the action which needed to be seen, because they have this the kind of cushy. It is a cushy adventure tale. There is not too much danger. They are getting shipped around in luxury vehicles to these destinations, and I kind of was losing the like grit of it. But then they, end up in a Viennese library that I was like, okay, I'm back in. They kept pulling me back in, especially with art references, and I was like, okay, this is a fun thing for me to now know, and to balance off, and another thing to go down a deep hole to. But in the end, it is just a really good adventure mystery for a Friday night on the telly, which I think is why it doesn't have like a big cinematic release, and it is fun to watch in the living room. And maybe that's why some of the grit is downplayed, but I do think it has all the elements to make of a fun watch.
Well, Matt, do the characters here have chemistry? These strange siblings or the ragtag group of friends, do they have chemistry, or is this just another dreaded put faces on the poster a la Red Notice?
I'd say it's closer to the Red Notice faces on the poster. I like John Krasinski, and I do think he's a good action star in sort of the Jack Ryan Amazon Prime show, for example, but I think he was a little bit miscast in this because he doesn't have that sort of roguish charm of a Brendan Fraser era mummy performance. But the cast is good enough, and there's enough famous faces to make it engaging, and they have reasonable chemistry, and there's sort of good Marvel-esque banter. It's just, I had a little bit of an issue with the amount of violence in what is essentially a kids' film. I don't think it needed to be as violent as it is, because they're sort of going on a jolly around the world with sort of rich guy billionaire money just funding them to just go around and just look at things. And I think that would have been fine. And then all the shootouts, it's all very much bloodless carnage. I mean, people are getting mown down, but you never really get a sense of anyone being injured. If someone gets shot, they just kind of grab their shoulder and that's it. So a little bit of a tonal mismatch. And I was a bit confused when you said National Treasures at the start. And I was like, they're not in National Treasure. But this is nowhere near as good as National Treasure, which I think is the gold standard. Well, what is indeed? But
sorry,
it was a fine mid-tier Guy Ritchie. That's it. Yeah,
whatever.
Wouldn't say you have to check it out, but it's not a waste of time either.
Emma, you and I are used to some Saturday morning passive viewing while we write the script for the show. For me, this was the passive of the passive viewings. How did you find it?
Well, I didn't, because you, Lorcan, are doing the heavy lifting this week. I actually got to watch it on a Friday night with my husband, who came back from the pub specifically to watch it, because he was the one that sold me G20 the other week, to be honest. And this is better than G20.
And you trusted him after G20.
So it wasn't. I actually like this much more than I thought I was going to. I'm surprised that you say that. I mean, I don't find Natalie Portman is always passive at the best of times for me anyway, so I was not surprised or unsurprised, but I thought she was quite sort of chipper in it, which I enjoyed. I also greatly enjoyed, like I say, her costuming at the end. She's in some kind of bizarre blanket wrapped around it, which looked very impractical to be rushing around a massive sort of gaping cavern underneath the pyramids. It takes it. I thought the location from the very further, they do a lovely chasing at the beginning where they use Bangkok really well. I think they use Vienna really well. I think they use Cairo and the pyramids really well. I do think that Guy Ritchie can shoot locations really well. I like the fact that the storyline wasn't terribly convoluted. There wasn't a lot of people standing around delivering exposition. It just kind of it managed to turn the plot, managed to tell you the plot in other places. I do agree sort of with Matt. John Krasinski's, well, I think the problem was his alleged chemistry with Gonzalez, who was brilliant obviously in Baby Driver. But his chemistry with Natalie Portman as the brother sister, which reminded me of The Mummy, it's also quite Da Vinci Code. I mean, it is literally a sprinkling of everything in this film, but I thought it all came together. The budget is decent and you can see it on there, and I think compared to some of the budgets we've seen from Netflix yesterday, I don't think they threw it into like horrendous kind of CGI or confusing visuals. I think it's quite it's a pretty well lensed film, I thought. And there was a lot to enjoy. And we talked, though, about Mission Impossible 8. We talked about having a baddie again. And again, the baddie in this is, God forbid I will spoil it, so I won't do. But I will just say, you can see the baddie within about 5 minutes of the film starting, and they're not terribly threatening. I was laughing at the fact that they have this bit where they've opened a crater that's like a mile deep and about the size of like 55 football fields, and the guy goes, well, that's not terribly impressive or something. You're like, I don't know, it's pretty impressive to me. It's fun. I think it's really fun. I think it's a family watch, but you're right. The thing that really surprised me, there was a massive shootout by the pyramids that I felt was really out of sync with the rest of the film. Everything else seemed to fit together, but then that huge shootout when half of them are underneath trying to find the Phantom of Youth and the other half are just out there, like with submachine guns, was really weird.
Well, it is a Guy Ritchie film. I feel like he probably went to the editing room and was like, wait, I'm missing something.
what could it possibly be? Yeah. And at that point, they left 2 members of their gang outside as well, which I was also confused about, because they were both, it's Mother's Milk from The Boys, who's wonderful, and I can't remember the actress name, but she played Coretta King in Selma, and she's really good as well. And I felt they were a bit wasted. But in general, for streaming, like Vicky said, I think a really fun Friday night watch.
Excellent. Okay, glowing review for a weekend evening watch at home. Phantom of Youth is certificate 12A, and it's streaming on Apple TV+.
Right, we are moving on very quickly before the ads to Hurry Up Tomorrow.
I know this is all really intense, but I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm really sorry about this. I really am.
That was the trailer for Hurry Up Tomorrow, very brief, which I'm pretty sure only Matt has seen, so I'm sincerely hopeful that he can fill in the gaps with my very swift intro. The Weeknd, Canadian music superstar, after heading up the appallingly received TV show The Idol as a troubled music superstar, has thrown his money behind another project where he stars as, you've guessed it, a music superstar, but this time under his own name. He's brought Jenna Ortega and Barry Keoghan along for the ride, which I understand is a sort of psychological thriller to sit as a companion piece alongside the album. An album? Is that a fair description, Matt, or have I made that up?
I think you can describe it like that, and there is certainly a large amount of his music in it. Without wanting to make this sound more interesting than it is, I'd describe it as a cross between Anora, Misery, and Narcissus falling in love with his own reflection. But I'd stress less interesting than that might suggest. It's a film in which The Weeknd funded it, wrote it, stars in it as himself, so we're dangerously close to complete self-absorption here, and I was really struggling as I watched it to try and work out whether this was incredibly straight-faced satire or just an incredible lack of self-awareness, because essentially he's written a film in which his music is so influential and deep and meaningful that Jenna Ortega's character can't help but fall madly in love with him and become a stalker. And there's an extended sequence where she explains in painstaking detail how good his music is to him, which is just, I think, the most self-absorbed thing I've ever seen, especially with the knowledge that he actually wrote all that dialogue himself. It takes a heck of a long time to get going, and when it does get going, it doesn't really go anywhere very interesting. It's possibly worth checking out on streaming just as a curiosity, but I was really quite bored.
So he should stick to music. I mean, Blinding Lights is a banger. That's about as far as I go.
General Ortega will explain in great detail why Blinding Lights is a banger to The Weeknd, as if he didn't already know how great it was.
What a very, very strange vanity project. Luckily we've got so many other good things to talk about that I don't even think I really need to ask you any more questions. And besides, we've got one screening of Hurry Up Tomorrow at The View on Monday, if you are very keen to catch it in a cinema, and it is a certificate.
Probably 15.
Okay. 15 for a sexy, non-sexy, psychological, non-psychological, boring thriller starring The Weeknd. If that's your bag, check it out.
Cambridge Radio.
Business is all about making connections. And when you advertise with Cambridge Radio, we can connect you with potential customers across Cambridge and South Cambs. Radio advertising is a proven marketing tool that can reach large audiences near you. Whether it's a commercial, sponsorship or digital, we'll make sure you're heard. Your message could play across the day as part of one of our local music shows or at the start of a podcast. Connect with Greg on 01223 967 959 to secure the best advertising rates in Cambridge.
There's a new look to retirement. It's Strawberry Fields in Stapleford, a brand new Rangeford retirement village. Luxury independent living with a vibrant community. There's a restaurant and bar, along with a village green, gym, spa, and much more. Take a tour of the stunning 1, 2, and 3 bedroom show homes and find complete peace of mind at Strawberry Fields in Stapleford.
RangefordVillages.co.uk. Exclusively for over 60s.
Listen to Cambridge Radio on your smart speaker.
Say Ask Radio Player for Cambridge Radio.
Cambridge Radio.
Cambridge Film Show.
This is Cambridge Radio.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Cambridge Film Show, and we're halfway through this weekend's bonanza of features that you can catch now. I'm Lorcan O'Neill, and with me today are Emma, Matt, Luke, and Vicky. Now, we're suitably off to a more tropical climate in Disney's Lilo and Stitch.
We have apprehended a dangerous experiment. Where is he?
He escaped.
He's trying to find the police cruisers.
He took the red one.
What hideous planet is caught in your crosshairs?
Shooting star! I wish for a friend. Like a best friend.
What the hell?
The lovable blue alien returns to our screens, and this time causing trouble in real-life Hawaii, when lonely Lilo, played by Mia Kealoha, meets a fugitive creature from outer space. A strong bond is formed, and her family must come together against intergalactic odds. Luke, did this recapture the magic for a modern generation?
Well, you're probably asking the wrong person here, because I have to admit that I never saw the original Lilo.
Blank slate. Let's go.
And I would say that's perhaps a good thing, because I think a lot of the criticism of this film is that what is the point of Disney doing another live-action cash-in of a film that was much beloved? And I think a lot of the criticism of this film is that it is so close to the original. But for many people, they wouldn't have seen the original, and I think that's probably why Disney have decided to make this film. That and their complete obsession with not producing original filmmaking. But as someone who had no previous experience with this film, I thought it was absolutely terrific. We talked earlier about Mission Impossible capturing the sense of old school filmmaking, and this felt very much like it was doing the same sort of thing with, less action stunts and more slapstick and comedy. It had a real sense of physicality to it. There's so much of the cast of this film is terrific, but I want to call out Billy Magnussen, who I think is just so delightful in absolutely everything. I think he came to my attention with Game Night a couple of years ago. He plays like this grown-up kid, and this is what he does in so many of these films. And here he plays one of the aliens that is cloned and becomes a human. And there's so much fun in having him acting like someone who's pretending to be human, which just feels like the role that Billy Magnussen was born to play. He's so funny, he's so charming. I thought the lead, Mia Kealoha, I'm not a big fan necessarily of child actors in leading roles, because you're depending so much on their ability to act consistently, which they often struggle to do. But I thought she was absolutely delightful here, opposite a CG animated Stitch, who I thought was also terrific fun. And the big sister brings some of the heart to this film. And that's one thing that actually surprised me, how much heart there was. I watched this film in a cinema by myself. I felt very awkward coming into the screening.
We should have gone together, because I did too. I also felt awkward.
I could definitely see all the eyes on me as this grown man walked into a screening for a child's film by themselves, thinking, what's this guy doing here? And I'm even more upset that they were looking at me absolutely sobbing through the final half hour of this film. I thought it is very faithful to the original as far as I can tell in almost every way, up until the final act, in which it really swings for the fences and does something that I think is really challenging. But I thought it told a brilliant story of accepting that sometimes you need help. And I think that is something that the original film was lacking, I believe, and I think it brings something different, which I think will incite a lot of interesting conversations, hopefully amongst the actual intended audience of this film, which are children.
Well, Emma, this comes from the director of Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, so a fairly kind of independent, heartfelt film. Do you think that brings anything new to that?
Yeah, I really wholeheartedly agree with Luke on this one. This has surprisingly mediocre reviews. You know, we reviewed Snow White. It's had better reviews than the Snow White live action.
I think everything's
remake,
had better reviews than
we
Snow White
in this
remake.
studio thought was very unfairly treated anyway. But it's had sort of... The interesting thing, I think, about Lilo and Stitch is when it first came out, it wasn't that big a hit, but somehow Stitch as a character has become one of Disney's biggest, most beloved franchise characters in terms of cuddly toys and produce, that's what merchandise, that's what I'm trying to say. So I think that's why, like Lou said, there are a lot of people who hold the original incredibly dear and feel that this has got rid of some of the chaos. I would disagree. I think it does come with a kind of heartfelt indie, less off a Disney production line, and let's say things like Beauty and the Beast, or God forbid, The Lion King, and which was just horrendous. This works much better. I also am slightly Pop-It on-screen allergic, and I thought that the leads in this were just wonderful. And there's a really lovely throwback. Tia, they split one character from the original into two. So you have Tia Carrera coming back as a social worker, and that's a really nice nod because she originally voiced Nani in the animated film. Billy Magnuson, enormous fun, as Luke said. It was lovely. I had a little weep as well at the end because the story of Ohana in this, maybe it's less about the chaos because Stitch is a chaotic agent for no other reason. He's been created just to be naughty, and he is. But the nice thing about this as a live action remake is you have Stitch, the animated creature, works very well into a CGI creature, and I think the acting against it is done really incredibly well, bearing in mind, because it was really hard to tell they would have been acting against a tennis ball or whatever. I thought they did well. It's voiced by Chris Sanders, who voiced the original Stitch. The voice is part of the joy that makes Stitch what it is, and Hawaii looked really beautiful. I just thought it was I think in the pantheon of Disney live action remakes, this is a cracker.
So a beautiful looking, heartfelt film with we always love a shout out to Billy Magnuson on the Cambridge Film Show. Lilo and Stitch certificate PG, and it's playing at the View, the Light and the Everyman.
Okay, on to Hallow Road.
Alice. Whoa, what? What's happened?
She hit someone with her car.
She's not moving. Mum. Dad. What do I do?
What about the ambulance?
They're not here.
You have to listen to Mum, all right?
Right, with that little touch of a trailer, we're taking a segue into the horror section of this not-so-sunny Maybank holiday show. And we're going to start with Hallow Road, Babak Anwari's follow-up to I Came By, which from what I understand was a pretty pulpy number, which main sales point seemed to be Hugh Bonneville as a baddie. So we're on to... But this is Hallow Road, and it stars Rosamund Pike and Matthew Rhys as parents who are called out in the middle of the night by their daughter, who has been involved in a fatal car accident deep in the woods on Hallow Road. Cue a race against time and some decisions that are made on the fly. Matthew, this has landed in cinemas with really pretty little fanfare, I would say. Does it deserve a little bit more press and awareness?
I think so, yes, definitely. It perhaps would have made more sense on streaming because it is a film that's very small in scope but big in interest, and certainly from my perspective it starts with this very engaging hook of a mysterious phone call in the middle of the night. Every parent's worst nightmare that your child has done something awful that you potentially need to go to quite extreme lengths to get them out of, if you even can. And I found the tension of the ongoing situation very effectively displayed, and the sort of ongoing psychological descent of the two central characters was very engaging and interesting to me. There's also a lot of really quite subtle touches, because even though the film almost entirely takes place in a car and you're sort of looking straight on at Rosamund Pike and Matthew Rhys, the camera will sort of subtly shift in its focus and slowly zoom in on a character as they give a revelation or kind of tilt and zoom on the speakerphone as there's an odd noise coming through. I thought it's all very well done. I mean, it's not a big movie. You could watch it twice and still have some time left over in the time it takes Ethan Hunt to get you to trust him one last time. But that's not a bad thing. I thought this was a cracker.
Okay, you mentioned the running time. This made me think, Luke, of Presence, the Steven Soderbergh ghost story that came out quite recently, which is also a very taut 80 minutes. Did this taut mix of English folklore and claustrophobic marital discussion work for you as well?
I can't quite tell whether I enjoyed this film or not. And I've been thinking about it for several days now. I think the parts of the film that you wouldn't necessarily think would work, such as the directing, I thought was really well done. Essentially the whole film is in the car apart from one small moment, and as Matt points out, the director does some really interesting visual tricks to make this film interesting. Where the script falls down is in the actual script itself. I think we're contractually obliged whenever we mention this film to bring up Tom Hardy's Lock from 10 years ago, which is the man in a car on the phone for an hour and a half talking, and the script for that was so compelling, just having a person on a phone, and you bring out so much nuance in the character. I think what the issue here is you have a really great story, but the script doesn't back it up. You have really arch moments where you have like the one character's really strong, high strung and dramatic, and the other one has to calm them down. And then because you need some diversity in the film, at some point they decide to switch roles, and one becomes the good cop and the other becomes the bad cop in a way that is extremely theatrical and really quite tiring. And you can see the gears of the script trying to get you to get this nuance in a way that really doesn't work. That said, there is one particular aspect of this film which I can't mention because it's a huge spoiler that really caught me off guard, and my jaw dropped and I thought, wow, I wasn't expecting this film to do that, and that kept me going. And despite all my issues with the film, I was captivated. It was a short run time, but I was captivated the whole way through.
That's really interesting you say that, because I think my issue with this film was I think I pretty much guessed all the spoilers within about 5 minutes. However, having said that, I do think we have two of our best known UK actors in this. I'll just throw very quickly to you. I mean, could you imagine this? Rosamund Pike and Matthew Rhys together, that's some calibre right there. Could you have imagined this with sort of slightly less?
Potentially. I mean, it's obviously an actor's movie because they are front and centre with nothing to hide behind. There's no CGI, there's no special effects. It is just them in the car acting out this incredibly tense situation. And I found it gripping throughout. And, there's always a worry when you go into a film like, is it going to devolve into supernatural nonsense? And I think this did kind of
like The Watchers or The Watch.
Well, I didn't have the pleasure of that, but I feel like this just about stayed the right side of that.
Yeah, agreed. I do. I mean, I like I say, although I feel like I saw where this was going very early on, and that, but it keeps it very brisk and taut. And we're having such a run at the moment, I think, of really good short films. It's like people are realising you don't have to make something 100 minutes plus or 120 minutes plus to make a good movie. Right, we've got to bust on. That's Hallow Road. It's a certificate 15. It's showing potentially nowhere, we realised after we'd seen this, due to the complete takeover of Mission Impossible 8 and Lilo and Stitch. But do try and seek it out, or we're pretty sure it's going to be on streaming very soon. So now we're going to move on to horror proper with Final Destination Bloodlines.
Death is coming for our family.
I said, oh, 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 oh,
Grandma, what's happening to us?
Years ago, I had a premonition that started it all. I saw what death was about to do.
That was the trailer for Final Destination Bloodlines. I'm smiling just because I was just listening to that trailer, made me laugh. Another massive release this weekend. Full disclosure, I haven't not just seen this one, I have never seen a single Final Destination film. Top critic work this week, what can I say? I'm neither a fan of The Weeknd nor of horror. Anyway, the high concept behind this franchise from the first film back in 2000 is if you somehow cheat death, don't you worry, death is always going to find a way to find you, to get you possibly more inventive. Vicky, I'd never even heard of the phrase Rube Goldberg before researching this week. This 20th century cartoonist who depicts super complicated gadgets and often the most common cultural touchstone for the death set pieces in these films. After a 14-year break, did it come back bigger and better?
Oh my God, it was fantastic. This is absolutely the highlight of the week for me. And I know I've went on about Wes Anderson, who is normally the highlight, but this absolutely brought me back. I mean, obviously, I love horror, I love gore, and the kills in this were fantastic. They were so fun, so imaginative. They chose a really, because it was Final Destination Bloodline, so instead of a group of friends or a group of strangers that are bound together, this is a family, that are a bit traumatized family, but still the familiarity of the characters. They got a lot of these characters I've not seen before. A lot of the actors, especially Richard Harmond, I think they had some quality dialogue. It was so sarcastic, absolutely. It knocked the Final Destination trope on its head of this is what you've come to see, and delivered full out. I just was laughing at every moment. I was sympathetic, but then I knew what was going to happen. It was really creative. I just can't imagine a better film experience, like a cinema experience, not a film experience, just a really good cinema experience.
Matt, you're often on here discussing your love of horror and particularly your love of like creative, practical effects, creative effects. So but this is not Saw or torture pornography in any way, right? Am I right in saying that? From the reading I've done around it, it seems to be a bit more like gore horror, gore comedy. Am I right in saying that? And how does it actually work as a viewing experience?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call this a horror movie. I'd say it's definitely comedy gore, because you always know what's about to happen, or you might think you do, and there's a lot of clever setups to the kills that kind of hint you towards one thing, but actually then something else happens. And especially if you've seen all of the other Final Destination movies and you're aware of the significance of a slightly dodgy barbecue or a truck with a load of logs on the back, and it's just seeing those just brings back all those phobias. I mean, this is going to give a whole new generation phobias of piercings and MRI machines, and potentially other things as well. I can't think of any criticism of this movie. It's just absolutely brilliant all the way through. Some incredible kills that just had me wincing and squirming in my chair. I can't wait to watch this again, and it does that brilliant thing of staying absolutely true to all of the established lore, but just extending it a little bit in a way that made perfect sense. Yeah, absolutely brilliant, especially for fans of the original, but even if you haven't seen that, incredibly fun.
Luke, have you seen all of these? Have you seen all the Final Destination films?
I've seen the first Final Destination ahead of watching this film. I came into this having seen the trailer for Bloodlines and thought, wow, this looks really fun. So I thought I should give myself a little précis of the films. And, you know, growing up, they were always around. I think everyone understands the concept of Final Destination, particularly the log sequence. Even as someone who didn't watch Final Destination 2, I think there's sort of generational trauma around that. I have to echo what Matt and Vicky said. I thought this film was absolutely superb in every single way, and I think it begins with the people involved in this film. So it was a story by John Watts, who did the most recent Spider-Man films, and he also did Cop Car, which was a really terrific film, a sort of horror thriller type thing. And the directors, Zap Lifkovsky and Adam Steen, they told a story about how they pitched the screenplay for this by going on a Zoom call with John Watts, and as they were in the middle of pitching the film, they had the background of their Zoom have the fireplace catch on fire, which set fire to the house, and Adam Steen's head got decapitated in a pre-recorded sequence. And I thought, these are people who really understand that it's about absurdity and about comedy. One more point I want to make is I came out of this film and I heard someone complain saying, oh, actually, I work with those types of machines and that would never happen in real life. And I thought, sir, you have not understood what this film is about.
You did not get the assignment.
If you're coming into this worrying that that it's unrealistic, I think leave that at the door. This is about absurdity and comedy, and I thought it was absolutely terrific fun.
A bit like pointing out that every Mission Impossible turns out to be very much Mission Possible. Right, final station, Bloodlines. Certificate 15. What? Sorry.
Just for my 2 cents as well.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Lorcan. I didn't realise everyone had seen it. I'm so sorry, Lorcan. Go.
No, just very quickly, as a big fan of the Final Destinations, with the exception of the Final Destination, the 4th one, which is a massive dip. Just to echo what everyone else has said, it's very fun. I don't mind over the top gore as long as it's creative and fun. And then there are some quality practical effects throughout. And just a shout out to Tony Todd. I believe this is going to be his last credited role, and he very much seems like he knew he was going to pass, and what a perfect way to end his career, and what a beautiful send-off that actually brought a tear to my eye. Highly recommend, like everyone else.
Oh, that is wonderful. Well, those Final Destination Bloodlines sounds like the film of the week completely. It's a Certificate 15, and it's showing at the Light, the View, and the Everyman.
Okay, we'll skip the trailer for Fear Street just for time. So, from the mind of R.L. Stine, the only author who can give Stephen King a run for his money, comes Netflix's Fear Street Prom Queen, about a bunch of it girls who are competing for the coveted title at Shadyside High. Vicky, what is it about this franchise you like, and did this satisfy that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like, apart from the incredible music cues that come forth, I feel like they really encapsulate, like, the teenage horror experience that I love, and they really get every trope correct. You know, you had the especially the 70s horror camp, and then you have, you know, the 1600s witch kind of trials, and now you've come to the 80s prom queen scene, which is one of my favorites. You know, shout out to Prom Night and Mary Lou, and they have really done their research, and they've got all the key elements in place for an incredible 1 hour 30 amazing experience with, you know, Billy Idol fun, which really drew me in. This was not a pause watch, this was a full-on go, and they really just keep on delivering with this series.
Nice. Matt, scary, funny, what can we expect? Yeah,
it's scary and funny, but unfortunately not as interesting as the previous 3 films would make you believe, because what's interesting about the previous 3 is it's a horror trilogy in reverse chronological order, which is really cool. And I was just waiting for the interesting twist in this that never came. It is just a book from the 90s, adapted straight. So it's very silly, but quite fun.
But also, I would say, probably being the only person of age in here to have grown up with these movies in the first place, they do a bang-on job, I think, of bringing out the 80s teen film, the costuming, the music, the dance-off to Gloria, the friend, the geeky friend who's in love with our heroine, and then combined with some really decently gory deaths that we've seen from the very beginning. This Fear Street franchise is a heap of fun for Netflix, and well done. Well done to Netflix.
A load of fun. It's the 4th in the series so far, so here's to many more films. Fear Street Certificate 15 and streaming on Netflix. Sadly, that's all the time we have for today. Please join us on the 7th of June, where we'll be learning karate all over again with Karate Kid Legends, and the Philippou brothers bring back another skin-crawling horror in Bring Her Back. Till then, it's goodbye from our reviewers.
Bye. Goodbye.
That's goodbye from us. Have a lovely weekend, and here's to the sun coming back out.
Cambridge Film Show.
Cambridge Radio.